Loosen the muffler bolts, and you're going to use a 10mm socket. Next, you need to loosen up the bolts that hold the muffler brackets on, and you need a 9/16 socket. You might have to use a breaker bar because these are on there pretty tight. Remove the shock there, got one bolt. Then we're going to take this bolt out right here. These two bolts that are on the engine, that whole piece slides out. Then you can remove the rear wheel. Use a 12mm socket to take out that shock bolt. And what I do is pull the shock up like this, put the bolt in, screw it in so you don't lose it, because the threads for the bolt are built into the shock. Let's get that big nut out of there. You're going to need a breaker bar because that's torqued down pretty good. This is torqued down pretty good, and you need a 15/16 socket, big socket. Might have to have somebody sit on the bike and to put weight back here on the wheel so you can unscrew this nut, or you can use an impact driver. See, it turns the wheel. There we go. Now just unscrew it. Take out these two bolts over here, so this whole piece will come out. These will come off with a 12mm socket. Now you can slide this piece out. There's a spacer inside the wheel there. Don't lose it. You need to put it back later. Now I can put these bolts back in here so you don't lose them. The shorter one goes in the top, and the longer one goes in the bottom. Now you can pull the wheel off, but don't pull the wheel off yet. We need it to support the bike right now. Next we have to remove the exhaust pipe, so you gotta go under the engine and unscrew the exhaust studs. So here's the exhaust studs. Get your socket, just unscrew them. Now you can take the pipe out. Next, you want to unhook the carburetor. Just get a flathead screwdriver, loosen up this hose clamp here. You gotta loosen up the air intake hose. And we're just going to leave the carburetor inside the bike. We're not going to take that out with the engine. Take the hose off. If you have a fuel shut-off switch, go ahead and make sure it's off, just in case, so the fuel doesn't leak all over the place. If something happens when the engine's not in here, turn that off. Now you can pull the carburetor out. Careful your fuel lines don't pop out from the carburetor. You gotta keep the carburetor level. Disconnect the starter motor wire. You just need a Phillips screwdriver. Be careful, there's a short little bolt there. You don't want to lose it. What I do is when I take the starter motor wire off, this is where it's threaded. So I just put the little bolt in there so it doesn't get lost. Before we go any further, you want to drain the oil. You need a 17mm socket to open the oil drain plug. Have to open this thing up to change the gasket because it's leaking like crazy. I'll just let the oil drain for a little while, and then we're going to start taking off this fan cover so we can get to the coil inside. Once you get the fan cover off, then you want to put these bolts back in where they go so you don't lose them. You need an 8mm socket to remove the bolts that hold the fan on. The engine might turn a little bit, so just grab onto the fan and hold it. If you put too long of a bolt in here, when you try to start the engine, it either won't spin or it'll spin and destroy the coil. Impact driver to pop this nut, and then you have to use the puller tool that screws in where these threads are in here to pull the magnet off. And also you can turn the magnet to turn the engine. See, and that helps to get some extra oil out of the motor. Because when you take this motor apart, you don't want to have all that oil in there. This nut is 17mm. It's reverse thread, so you have to turn it counterclockwise to screw it on. Then you get a 17mm socket and tighten this up until it pops off. Right there. Then you can take these two bolts out to take the magnet off, and there's two bolts here. Stator coil, and there's this bracket in here that holds the wires in place, so when the magnet spins around it doesn't rip up the wires. Get your 8mm socket, remove these two bolts. I'm going to loosen up the case bolts a little bit and try to break the seal on the first gasket to get some more of that oil out. Starter clutch is junk. I actually found a better one. It's supposed to be better. I just got it in today in the mail, so I'll be showing you that as well in the other video. Now I just got to try to break the seal on this gasket. In order to get the bolt off that's holding the engine on, you have to put a breaker bar here. You need a 9/16, and the other side you need a 1/2 inch. Now you gotta be careful when you pop this bolt out, the engine's gonna drop. Reinstall the oil drain plug. Spring goes first like that, and then you put the little screen in. It's a pain in the ass. You have to push it in there, then hold it as you get the thread started. Keep the tire on, it'll help support that side of the engine. I'm just going to use this little case here to catch the engine. I'm going to do my best to try to hold it and guide it down. So I'm going to go pull that bolt out. Got to do it from the other side. Grab it with some pliers. Okay, so I can drop. How was the guide from the bushings? Drop it down. Now the engine's out of the bike. Next step, we got to remove the wheel to lower the back part of it. We have to disconnect the bolt on the other side on that shock first. Support the engine when you take the bolt out. Oh, that's supporting the engine is this right here, the wheel. You have to disconnect the rear brake cable. Forgot about that. Also make sure that the breather line is disconnected. There we go, the engine's out. That's how you can take the engine out of your scooter. Then you just reverse it to put it back in. Start by installing that. Put at an angle and put in that one bolt. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, click the notification bell. If you have any suggestions for future videos, leave a comment.